Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 761 for the 7th of May, 2023. Richard Saunders coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada at the We Can Reason convention. I've just given a talk and I got nobody booed, which was very encouraging. I'm with Adrian Hill. Hello, Adrian.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And Celestia Wood. Hi.
Hey, Richard.
Hey, from Squaring the Strange.
That's right. Yep, out here in Calgary. I've been enjoying the wonderful hospitality of Adrian Hill, Skeptic Zone ace reporter. And I do want to share with your listeners, there was one moment that happened during your talk during Adrian's talk that I wish I had been recording from the back of the room. I was sitting with you. And Adrian announced to the room of Calgarians here that Richard had not really been into Canadian maple syrup. He had always used Australian maple syrup, and an entire room of Canadians turned around and went, "Oh my God, the blasphemy!"
I had to walk out in shame. I did.
But then they all found out you had been converted to the Canadian maple syrup, so your conversion was witnessed and celebrated.
It was.
A semi-religious experience. Adrian, I think the convention so far is going really well.
Yeah, it's been a blast. We had a pub night last night, very successful, more than double what we had expected. And
a lot of spoons were bent.
A lot of spoons bent and some origami made and a quiz show, a trivia night. It was very good. And today I'm relieved and relaxed now because I did my talk.
Me too. So
Celestia's still worried.
I've got a couple hours before I'll get mine out of the way, but hopefully I'll be teaching everybody a little bit about how to apply good PR principles to skeptical stories.
And don't forget to listen to Squaring the Strange, of course.
Absolutely.
Coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone, we report from the Weekend... we're doing that right now. We report from the Weekend Reason Conference with Adrian Hill and Celestia Ward. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, you see.
You were psychic.
After that, it's the Australian Skeptics newsletter read by...
Adrian Hill.
Adrian Hill, absolutely. And then it's the Book of Tim. And this week, Tim interviews me about investigations. He turned the tables on me. He turned the microphones. Then to round off the show... before that we have UFO Car Wash with Brian Dunning. Brian Dunning and I were abducted by a UFO and we took the opportunity to talk about his new documentary. That's coming up. But yes, to round off the show, we go back to the Trove Archives where we look at the relationship between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini. How about that? But now, my friends, it's time for us to run around the corner, head down the hall, and do you think there's any of that velvet... Was it red velvet?
Red velvet cake, yes.
Red velvet cake.
With blueberries on top.
If there's some of that left, we'll find out soon. But while we do that, we hope you enjoy...
The Skeptic Zone. Hello everyone, this is Adrian Hill from Canada here to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. This is newsletter number 172. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now, let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all, says Tim. Details from Skepticon 2023 are being posted. A call for papers is out for various formats. We look forward to seeing you in Melbourne on December 2nd through 3rd. More immediately, we have all the usual issues of alt-med dangers, expert escapades, and how good is the plague? Double thumbs up emojis not included. Not to mention how you should tap into the paranormal and let your dog make all of your important life choices. a normal? Really, Tim? Does that mean I have to ask my dog Jewel about life choices? Interesting. And, as always, you can go to our Facebook page for more interesting stories. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, I'll do just that. Update Skepticon 2023. Call for papers. The Victorian Skeptics, organisers of this year's Australian Skeptics National Annual Convention, or Skepticon, have put out a call for papers. Skepticon 2023 will be held at the Brain Centre, Melbourne University, on December 2nd through 3rd. Full details are gradually being rolled out on the Skepticon website. WHO's pseudoscience problem. In trying to ensure everyone has access to healthcare, the World Health Organization promotes homeopathy, traditional Chinese medicine, and, quote, rhythmical embrocations, end quote. Warning to pregnant women over TCM. Researchers from Shanghai examined the health of babies born to 16,000 women across the country. Babies born to women who underwent traditional treatments while pregnant were twice as likely to have birth defects compared to mothers who did not. TikTok takedown of Barbara O'Neill's salty prognosis. A pithy and telling response to banned naturopath Barbara O'Neill's diatribe against salt. Believe it or not, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Pint of Science, May 22nd through 24th. 15 cities across Australia, plus 26 countries around the world, are to take part in Pint of Science. In Australia, that means science engagement, primarily through a national festival that comprises a range of events looking at all disciplines of science, including interesting and relevant talks on the latest science research that are accessible to all. Volunteers and participants are welcome. How science and politics are bringing an end to ufology. Quote, what ufologists want more than anything, besides actual proof of extraterrestrials, is for serious people to pay serious attention to them, end quote. The problem being, of course, that once you get really serious investigations by real scientists, you get real results. On a side note, I hear from Richard Saunders that the rough edit of, quote, the UFO movie they don't want you to see, end quote, by Brian Dunning is looking very impressive. We're working on the June issue of the Skeptic magazine with a look at the legal and financial goings-on of the anti-vaccination movement. In the meantime, the March issue is out and about. And if I was really Canadian, I'd say oot in the boot. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. You can sign up for a hard copy or digital edition, or both, since the digital is offered free to those who take up the hard copy version. Contact the editor if you're not sure if your existing subscription needs renewing. Items of interest. New York City Mayor discusses Haunted Mansion. The city that never sleeps, even after death, apparently. A list of the 10 most expensive horror movies ever made, which goes to show that high budget doesn't guarantee high quality. Brits believe dogs are psychic, and I'm guessing a few Canadians might think that too. More than 8 in 10 British dog owners think their pet has psychic powers, a new study reveals, and 65% say they let their paranormal pooch make some decisions for them. Oh dear, this might explain a lot. Until next time, this is Adrian Hill, who has to run upstairs, get in my car, and go to the airport to pick up Richard Saunders. So exciting.
Les habla Paula desde la hermosa ciudad de Buenos Aires, en Argentina. Cuando escuchamos podcasts, escuchamos los mismos que escucha todo el mundo, como The Skeptic Zone. Ojalá puedan venir a visitarnos algún día. Los esperamos con nuestras riquísimas comidas locales y hasta podemos ir a bailar un tango. Mientras tanto, sigan disfrutando de su dosis semanal de ciencia y pensamiento racional. ¡Chao!
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Hi, my name's Tim Mendham. I'm the editor of Australian Skeptics magazine, The Skeptic, and I'm also Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics Inc. First of all, I'd like to interview someone you may have heard of, Richard Sanders.
Hello, yes.
Yes, Richard Sanders. We can talk about investigations.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I thought I'd surprise you on this one.
Thank you. It's rare I'm a visitor in the Book of Tim, but here you go. Yeah.
The interesting thing is that from the very first issues of the Skeptic magazine, very first activities, it was always about investigations, right? You'd hear about something and then you'd follow it up.
Right.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sanders, you are actually...
Are you Chicken Colonel Sanders? Yes.
You are actually the chief investigator for
Yes.
Australian Skeptics, and
Yeah.
you have been for some time, actually, when you're not being president.
When I'm
as
not
I said.
doing other things.
When you're doing other things, actually. But, I mean, it's interesting the range of investigations we've had.
Oh, yeah. And they change. I mean, I've never investigated a psychic surgeon, for example.
Yeah, I've seen demonstrations of it, but done by magicians and people like that.
Yeah, I've only seen magicians do it, yeah.
But the interesting thing is, of course, we have our $100,000 challenge, which is for people who come to us claiming a particular power, and then we can test them. And we've done hundreds of those.
We have, yeah.
I noticed, actually, in the very first issue of the magazine, they refer to the famous James Randi Dick Smith test of water diviners. They said they had over 100 people applying, but a lot of them weren't diviners. A lot of them were psychics and things who all applied when Dick laid out the challenge amount. Dick Smith.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. So there's been quite a lot of people going through tests. Then there are people that we approach.
Yes.
Right, and that's more the investigations thing.
Yeah, well, yes. In fact, right now I'm going to do a little report for you about something that just happened last night. Were you aware that there was a worldwide revelation of new knowledge imparted to us last night?
No, I didn't realise that.
There you go.
Richard, was it exciting?
It was by a group called Creative Society. Amongst other claims is the cure for cancer.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. We've always wanted one of those.
I always wanted one. So that's the sort of thing that we look into when these claims come along. Yeah.
And some of them are actually sort of a bit sort of like desktop or sort of armchair investigations, but others we actually go out and see people.
Yeah.
Right. And you've done quite a few of those in your time.
Yeah. From palm readers to, well, mostly water diviners, I guess.
But also, one of my favourites is Weeping Walls.
Yeah, you know what? I was invited by a TV crew many years ago to go to a house where the weeping, and I saw them turning it into such a circus, and the people involved were a bit too passionate for my liking, so I didn't go to that one.
That was the one where they had their teenage son got killed in a car crash.
Yes, from memory, something like that.
And you went twice, I believe, to that, because it initially was announced and then later on.
Oh, yeah, it had a resurgence. I was approached at least twice by the TV networks, but I never went to the house. It's possible our friend and challenge coordinator Ian Bryce did. I'll have to ask him about that. I've got it in the archives, all the story about the Weeping Walls. Yeah.
It's also been published in the magazine.
Yeah.
So, we publish everything.
There were writings. People were drawing initials on the wall in oil. Yeah. And as I said to one of the TV reporters, if there are initials written on the wall, someone's written them.
It wasn't real?
Anyway, but I love doing investigations, but the true investigations don't come along as often as I thought they would be when I joined. I mean, it's not every night we're going to a haunted house or something like that.
I think one of the interesting things, you look back at these old issues of the magazine, like Volume 1, Number 1, and I've just had a look through the first 10 years of the magazines, and there's a lot of occasions there where they visited people, and they did. I think it was in the early days of the Skeptics.
Yeah.
Skeptics were a bit of a novelty, right? Yes. And the people who were making claims were a lot more naive, I think.
Yeah.
Even just, we're talking about only decades ago, but I think they were very different.
Well, I've certainly investigated people who I would try to politely say were, in my opinion, naive.
Yes, yeah.
The genuine, the people who genuinely think they've got the special powers.
But the claims are often pretty naive. You think, oh, right, okay, debunk in 5 seconds, half of those things. But whereas they're a bit more difficult these days. They're a lot more technical, a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a long time since I've been on a proper field investigation, partly because of COVID, I guess. But they can be very, very complex things to try and unpick. And that's why, we're not afraid to seek the advice of specialists in a certain field of technology or physics or something like that.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting to point out that we do a lot of field work. We're not just sitting in front of a microphone.
Well, as I've said many times on the Skeptic Zone and when I'm interviewed, don't call us armchair skeptics. We're not. We go out and see for ourselves.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Sanders. That's great. Okay.
I'm going back to get some chicken now.
Okay, appreciate that.
Oh, Russ. Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad I found you in line.
These clouds are really freaking me out.
I hate having to stand in line, and boy, what a line.
These giraffes do not smell good.
No, they do not, and they have such short necks.
But I'm hearing we need to get on this ark.
We gotta get on the ark. It is about to rain. God is about to destroy humanity. Hey, sorry. Are you Noah?
Yeah, I know we look like humans, but we're actually we're
totally.
podcasters.
We are podcasters, so it's different.
Have you heard of Ono, Ross, and Carrie?
We investigate spirituality, claims of the paranormal, stuff like that.
And you have a boat and say the world's going to end, so it seemed like something for us to check out.
We would love to be on the boat.
We came 2x2.
What do you think?
Ono, Ross, and Carrie, available on MaximumFun.org.
Getting my maximum underbody.
Whoa! I don't know what's happening. I think we've been abducted by a UFO. I'm with Brian Dunning.
Back. I went in too far.
And we're trying to have his car washed. No? And this is an intelligent car wash. It says,
we hope so.
Stop. It's okay. And the door's shutting in front of us. The door's shut behind us. We don't know what to expect, but here it comes. This is a bit of a strange experience, Brian, but you're used to strange experiences, aren't you?
I suppose so. I don't know what that means, but yes.
It's all happening around us. It's a little bit surreal. Now, I had the great pleasure last night of seeing a preview of your movie, the UFO movie. They don't want you to see, and I hope that you're quite pleased with it.
I'm very pleased with it. Yes, It's the best work I've ever done, and it's in the hands of professionals doing the color and the sound and all that stuff. That's going to be professional quality. I'm super happy about it.
What's your main aim? Why would you put together another UFO movie?
I'm trying to get the people who are UFO true believers to inform their beliefs a little bit better with real science. That's the basic goal of the movie.
That's the crux of it, yeah.
It's not a debunking movie because that's just going to turn people off and it won't have any audience. It's not a pure skeptic movie. It's certainly not a credulous movie.
Yeah.
It's intended to inform your opinion with better science. Whoever you are, whatever your feelings on UFOs are.
I think it does. Having seen it and I tried to watch it critically and coldly, but I loved it. It was really informative. Great people in it.
Yeah.
How did you? I mean, these wonderful scientists and commentators like our friend Mick West.
Yeah.
I think we're about to take off.
I think so.
Look at this. Our friend, but you discovered some wonderful astronomers along the way.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah.
And
there's a couple of astrobiologists, one astrophysicist in the movie. Got, of course, Hal Bidlack representing, talking about missile events that happened back in the 1960s that they're still talking about today in Congress. I'm spacing out. There's so many people in the movie. I think there's 10. think that's right.
Sounds about right to me. How can people at this stage still find out about the movie and the progress?
Go to the UFO.movie, and there's a place to put in your email. It just comes from me. There's not a spam and whatever. Unsubscribe whenever you want. But that's where all the updates get posted to the UFO.movie email list.
That's the clue, folks. Why? I'm not sure what. I think we are really being abducted by a UFO here at the moment. It's quite surreal. There are flashing lights, and I've got a scratch I didn't know about.
Well, that can only be explained one way.
I think so.
The midnight abduction.
I think it's over.
I think it's over.
Thank you, Brian.
Are you looking for a science-based medical podcast to answer all your questions about health? Check out The Body of Evidence. Whether you're curious about the potential benefits of omega-3s or the potential risks of vaping, we take a look at the body of evidence to separate the noise, the hype, the lies from actual scientific rigor. We do it with comedy skits. The only logical thing to do is for me to take off all my clothes and run into the street.
No, remember the first rule of podcasting. Always keep your pants on.
With jingles.
Some are thrilled, some are not. You lose that hair if you stop propitiation.
And by, discussing what the evidence has to say on the topic at hand.
Orlistat is a pill, but yeah, it has the side effects of bloating, gas, and greasy stool, which makes it very unpleasant.
The Body of Evidence. Find it at bodyofevidence.ca or on your favorite podcast app. The Body of Evidence. Medicine that tastes funny and science made easy.
Time to once again dive back into those pages at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia, which is a reservoir of our digital history when it comes to newspapers and magazines, and many other printed reports and other materials like diaries and so on. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we've been looking at various references to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. This week, inspired by a question put to me by Maynard a couple of weeks ago, we're going to look at the relationship between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a proponent of spiritualism and the paranormal, and Harry Houdini, the famed magician and escape artist and critic of especially seances. Now, we've certainly looked at Harry Houdini before in the Trove segment when it came to his adventures here in Australia. And according to some reports, he was the first person to fly an aeroplane in this continent. Harry Houdini, apart from anything else, was a very good self-promoter. And of course, Harry Houdini was famous for exposing the fakers, the scammers, and the charlatans when it came to things like seances. And in the 1920s, they were rather theatrical affairs with mediums causing things like bells to ring and things to appear and trumpets to sound. However, he did have a friendship, apparently not a lasting friendship, with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and I've discovered a paper here, a report in The Guardian online by Lynn Gardner. This is dating back to 2015. Harry Houdini and Arthur Conan Doyle, a friendship split by spiritualism. The author and the illusionist might seem an odd couple, but a shared interest in the afterlife made for an unlikely bond and bitter rift. And actually, this story is by way of talking about a play that was put on at the time in 2015 about these two men. But briefly, the two were drawn together by their mutual fame, I guess. They met up, and their shared interest in spiritualism on one side of the coin or the other And the story goes on to talk about them coming to blows, their friendship torn asunder when Houdini did not accept things like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's wife was a medium. And I've discovered a wonderful photograph of the two men in the 1920s, both looking splendid. Sir Arthur towering above Harry Houdini, who was not very tall at all. But let's go back to those archives, the Australian newspapers, and see what the reporters and writers at the time made of this strange relationship. So we turn to the pages of the Mudgee and Northwestern Representative. What a great name for a newspaper. From the 2nd of February, 1925. Houdini attacked by Conan Doyle. Houdini, the magician, says he is thinking of taking legal action against Sir Arthur Conan Doyle because of attacks by Sir Arthur in an article in the Boston Herald. The article was an answer to Houdini's criticism of the Boston medium Margery, whose genuineness Houdini questioned. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle defended the medium whom he had visited during his American travels. Houdini has reportedly declared that his 35 years' experience in the investigation of mediums had never revealed a genuine spiritual manifestation. Now, a couple of years later, in the Evening News from Rockhampton in Queensland, on the 8th of January 1927, dispute over Houdini, trickery or occult power. And this is not long after the unfortunate death of Harry Houdini. Sir A. Conan Doyle's opinion, a question which is interesting spiritualistic circles today, says the Westminster Gazette of November 13, concerns the enigmatic personality of Houdini, the handcuff king, who died on October 30. It is held by one section that his performances were originally conjuring tricks. Another section believes his tricks were accomplished by psychic force. It is claimed by this party that Houdini's escape from locked chests, nailed-up boxes, prison cells, etc., were made by dematerialization, a psychic phenomenon by which the body of an individual disappears in a physical form and is to a great extent freed from the limitations of the physical world. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle said the subject was not one he could treat lightly, but probably he would write a considered opinion on the matter. The two views. I do not wonder that when a man is nailed into a box and thrown into the sea, and not only survives the ordeal, but escapes from confinement, there should be some talk of dematerialization, said Sir Arthur. If Houdini's tricks really were tricks, then he stands as the champion trickster of all time. If the phenomena depended on psychic power, then it opens up the question how far a man is justified in concealing the source of his power by making frenzied public attacks upon that source. And I'll just quickly pause here to say I've seen this quite a few times myself. When somebody doesn't understand how a trick works, or they're inclined to believe in the paranormal, then they will leap to all sorts of conclusions. This we saw notably with people insisting that Uri Geller could really bend spoons because they didn't know the trick. Or they'll throw red herrings and straw man arguments about. A classic with Uri Geller was, and I don't know if anybody really seriously suggested this, but Geller got a lot of mileage out of it. He would claim that people said that he had laser beams in his belt, or he had acid on his fingers. Ridiculous comments, but he was able to say, look, see, my belt hasn't got a laser, and look, my fingers don't have acid. We read on. Houdini always asserted that he was a trickster. He was, in fact, a lifelong opponent of the spiritual movement. A correspondent states he's seen in New York Houdini's instructions to magicians who intended to follow his work, and in which he attributes his methods to legerdemain, particular muscular development, and the skillful employment of confederates. A quick pause here to say, yes, all this makes perfect sense when you're doing a conjuring performance, an entertainment performance. Psychic power. Sir A. Conan Doyle states in his book, quote, Our American Adventure, end quote, that Houdini, although an avowed unbeliever, gave unmistakable evidence of mediumistic qualities, gifts which, Sir Arthur said, he endeavoured to explain away on the most threadbare of excuses. Mr. Hewitt Mackenzie of the, and it's a shame that the next word starting with P is not clear at all, so it's from the something college, told a Westminster Gazette reporter that while he considered Houdini had distinct psychic power, he did not think it was employed in his professional work. Seances are being held in an endeavour to communicate with the spirit of Houdini in order that the question may be definitely settled to the satisfaction of spiritualists. Houdini's secret. By the will of Houdini, the late Handcuff King, his library, valued at £100,000, goes to the American Congressional Library. His illusions became the property of his brother T.F. Weiss, and the secrets of his famous escapes are to be destroyed. The library is very rich in works of witchcraft, magic, and spiritualism, and also in theatrical literature, including the diary of David Garrick, which Houdini claimed to be the original manuscript, and one of the few copies of Reginald Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft, published in 1584 and ordered to be burnt by King James I. He used to buy up from the dealers their whole stock of books on his pet subjects in the chief capitals. An interesting insight maybe into the thinking of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and again, this is certainly something I've seen myself, people who, when baffled by a magic trick, will leap to the paranormal conclusion rather than, oh, I was fooled by a clever magic trick. Or should I say, conjuring. And now in 1933, on the 22nd of March. From the Evening News, Rockhampton, Queensland, and this is now after the death of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The illusions of Houdini, tricks that amazed Conan Doyle, friendly enemies. There can have been fewer stranger friendships than that between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini. By all the rules, Doyle, the spiritualist, and Houdini, the illusionist and escapologist, should have been sworn enemies. Their beliefs were hostile, and they argued for years. Yet there was a real affection between the two men, who were curiously childlike in some respects. Some good stories about them are told in Houdini and Conan Doyle by Bernard M. L. Ernst and Hereward Carrington, a book which will appeal equally to spiritualists and skeptics. While Houdini showed Doyle that he could reproduce phenomena by trickery, Doyle was insisting that Houdini himself was the greatest medium of all time. One day, Houdini suspended a slate perpendicularly by wires in his room and placed a cork in a plate of white oil. After Doyle had inspected everything, Houdini asked him to go into the street and write a message on notepaper. Doyle walked 3 blocks away, turned a corner, wrote something on a piece of paper, and put it back in his pocket. He returned to Houdini, who had a third person present to see that he did not leave the room. After Doyle had returned, Houdini placed the cork on the table. As if by magic, it stuck there, and then commenced writing. It wrote the words, Mene, Mene, Tekel Upharsin. Now, just briefly, that's a phrase from the Bible, which is a warning of misfortune. We read on. Doyle was astounded, for this was the message he had written in the street and had not removed from his pocket. This was the sort of thing which made Doyle attribute supernatural powers to Houdini. The illusionist strenuously denied it, but he never explained his illusions. And finally, from 1933, on the 29th of April, in the Western Star and Roma Advertiser in Queensland, Conan Doyle and Houdini. In 1920, a remarkable friendship sprang up between Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Houdini and continued during the last decade of their lives. The chief link in that friendship was spiritualism, of which Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was an earnest champion, and Houdini, the famous escaper and skeptical opponent. In, quote, Houdini and Conan Doyle, end quote, Mr. Bernard M. L. Ernst, president of the parent assembly of the Society of American Magicians, and Mr. Hereward Carrington, member for the Society for Psychical Research, give a detailed analysis of the relationship based chiefly on their correspondence. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle consistently tried to persuade Houdini that his so-called tricks must be due to psychic or supernatural powers. Houdini reiterated that they were tricks and nothing more, achieved by purely physical and rational means, and that the performances of mediums could be explained in the same way. He also consulted Doyle as to the relative bona fides of the mediums he should seek out and put to the test. In the end, neither could convince the other of the rightness of his beliefs. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote to Houdini, "My dear chap, why go around the world seeking a demonstration of the occult when you are giving one all the time? Mrs. Guppy, a well-known medium, could dematerialize, and so could many folks in Holy Writ, and I do honestly believe that you can also. My reason tells me that you have this wonderful power, for there is no alternative. Though I have no doubt that, up to a point, your strength and your skill avail you." Houdini's judgment on Doyle is summed up in a note in his memoranda. He is good-natured, very bright, but a monotoniac on the subject of spiritualism, being uninitiated in the world of mystery, never having been taught the artifacts of conjuring. It was the simplest thing in the world for anyone to gain his confidence, to hoodwink him. What a fascinating relationship between two very famous men of very differing opinions. And I was just reminded reading this and the last few entries of the time I saw a trick almost 20 years ago, and magicians will know this trick as the crazy man's handcuffs. This is a trick with two rubber bands which appear to melt through each other. And the first time I saw that trick was at a Skeptic's dinner here in Sydney by a wonderful magician who sadly passed away some years ago, Mr. Steve Walker. But anyway, he did this trick in front of my eyes. Where else? And I, for a moment, thought to myself, that cannot be. That is simply impossible. It cannot happen. And so maybe we can understand how some people are completely and utterly stumped when trying to find an explanation for the seemingly impossible, which after all is one of the aims of a good conjuring performance. Harry Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, one of the fascinating series of reports listed in the pages of Australian newspapers and magazines and discoverable at trove.nla.gov.au, because when you go there, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. I'm still here at the We Can Reason conference. It's going very well. And I must say the audience were very kind and laughed at some of my jokes during my talk. Thank you very much to all those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv via Patreon or PayPal. Your contributions mean so much to the show, and there would be no show without you wonderful people out there. Coming up on next week's show, I look via Trove at the Fox sisters, the famous sisters from the 1800s who fooled thousands by pretending to talk to the dead. All that and much more coming up on next week's show. But for this week, For this week, as the conference starts again, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.